Hello and welcome everyone. This is class number 32 of the UPSC Mains Answer Writing Initiative, where I'm trying to simplify UPSC answer writing for all of you, trying to remove the fear of facing questions in the mains examination from your mind. In case you are new here, let me tell you what we do. We take up a previous year question that UPSC has asked. We discuss that, try and see what to write, what not to write, and in the end I give you a homework for you to practice, which you can email to me and I'll be happy to evaluate and give you a feedback on that. A lot of you have been taking advantage of that. I'm getting a lot of answers every single day and I have been trying to return all of those within 2 to 3 days maximum. So make sure that you also take advantage of this. If you're new here, please do hit the subscribe button, and also you can join the Telegram channel, over which you can get the PDF of all these lectures that are done here on my YouTube channel. If this is your first class and you do not know how to begin, if you have never written an answer for the UPSC examination, I would really advise you to go to class number 1 of this entire playlist. I'm giving the link in the description of the video. When we started this series in class number 1, we discussed about how to write an answer. We discuss about how to make the introduction, what to write in the intro, what not to write in the introduction. Then we discuss about the main body, and then we discussed about what to do in the concluding part, where to write the way forward, where not to write the way forward, so on and so forth. So this is what we did. Please make sure that in case you are new here, you have no idea how to begin from the scratch, please see class number 1 first and then you can come back. So once that is done, let's see what is the question that we will be answering today. This was a question asked by the UPSC in 2022 mains paper of GS2. The question is, the most significant achievement of modern law in India is a constitutionalization of environmental problems by the Supreme Court. Discuss this statement with the help of relevant case laws. If you look at the language of the question, language might be slightly tricky, but it's a very simple, straightforward question. The question simply is that in India, there have been a lot of improvements done when it comes to environment, and most of them have been because of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, in a lot of its orders, a lot of its judgments, has taken up this matter of environment, and this is where you have to give examples of what were the Supreme Court cases in which they talked about environment and the reason why environment is important. Now, over here in these kind of questions where they are asking you about Supreme Court cases or case laws, you have a free hand. Whichever case you remember, you can try and give answer to that. So there may be 50, 100 cases of this kind where the Supreme Court may have talked about something related to environment, may have given some direction to the government, may have made a new policy. Whatever you remember, go ahead with that. 4, 5, 6, depending upon the word limit, how many examples you remember at that point of time, try and include those answers only. So again, this is an open-ended question. It was in the news, in fact, very recently. If you remember, very recently, not even back in 2022, very recently, Supreme Court, in fact, had said that right to clean, breathable air is also a part of Article 21 under right to life. So there are so many examples that you can quote. The examples that even happened after 2022 can be quoted here if you want to write a perfect answer from today's context. So how do we start this? We can start here again in the introduction part. There's nothing to give a definition of. So in the introduction part, we will give 1 or 2 just names of the examples of how Supreme Court has expanded this right to life to include many rights related to our environment as well. So we'll write something like expansive interpretation of Article 21 in the Maneka Gandhi judgment, dilution of locus standi. I hope all of you know what is locus standi. So locus standi basically is a judicial concept that means only if you are related to the case, only then you can file the case. For example, if there is a person who you don't know is being beaten up by someone else. Now you are not connected to the person who is getting beaten up. You're not connected to the person who is beating. That means you have no locus standi in the case. So earlier the courts were very strict that only those who had a standing in the case, who were connected to the case, could file the case. Now in environment related matters, people are not individually affected. You have to understand in environment related matters, it's a matter of the entire society. For example, it may be the case that wherever I am living, the air is clean. But that does not mean that if the air is not clean somewhere else, I cannot file the case. I should also be allowed to file the case. That is now allowed by the Supreme Court because they have diluted the concept of locus standi in the form of PILs, etc. Public interest litigation that you can find. Then in the Constitution, we see in the directive principle of the state policy, Article 48A, 51A, they also talk about environmental impact or the policy related to the environment. Something like this can be your introduction. Now the main body is pretty simple if you know what cases do you have to give examples of. So there are multiple cases that you can give examples of here, starting with the Dehradun Coring case. The Supreme Court said that right to live in a healthy environment is a part of Article 21. So for example, if tomorrow just next to your to where you live, the government starts digging up the land and says we will take out coal from here, that is affecting your right to life. So Supreme Court said right to live in a healthy environment is also a part of Article 21. Then I give an example of MC Mehta case, where Supreme Court said right to live in a pollution-free environment is a fundamental right. There's a famous P.A. Jacob case in which freedom of speech does not include freedom to use loudspeakers because it causes sound or causes noise pollution. Then there were again examples of earlier cases, 1954, recent case of Vellore citizens, right to compensatory forestation, where the Supreme Court talked about establishment of Campa funds so that any money that is being submitted by the corporates to this fund for deforestation should be used for good environmental purposes. Now, here are just a few examples. It does not mean that you also have to write the same examples. Depending upon whichever example you remember at that point of time in the examination, feel free to go ahead and quote those examples. It might differ from here to that particular day. So whichever example you remember at that point of time, try and go ahead with that. 6 are good enough, 5 or 6, these are usually good enough to answer this. We'll conclude this by saying how Supreme Court has expanded the scope of multiple rights by reading into the Constitution, by interpreting the Constitution, thus understanding or supporting the fact that Constitution is a living document that is meant for ensuring a better life for the individual. Something like this can be introduction, rather can be conclusion in your own words. Again, I'm repeating this once again. The Supreme Court cases can be different for different students. It does not have to be the same. Now I'm giving you a homework of a similar kind of a question. This has not been asked by the UPSC. I have made this question for you. Similarly, the question is, judiciary has played a key role in redefining legal landscape with respect to wealth redistribution and right to property since India's independence. Elaborate. So a similar kind of a question where you will have to write about the role of the Supreme Court. But in this question, we wrote about the role of Supreme Court related to environment. Herein, you have to write about the role of Supreme Court with respect to right to property, wealth redistribution, etc. since India's independence. So you can give examples of multiple cases in the past as well. If you want, you can submit your answers here on this email ID. I'll be happy to respond to you, evaluate it for you. I hope this series is helpful for you. We'll see you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Be regular here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.